Nathaniel sat in a lounge-like section with Esme strapped to his chest in a kangaroo-style pouch. Although the wrap secured her head snugly against his chest, he still used one hand to cup the back of her small head, gently stroking her curls as the craft took off. Arya sat in the seat beside him, carrying Landon in a similar kangaroo wrap, while Miss Everly, seated opposite Arya, cradled Manson in the same type of wrap. Liam and Owen occupied the two empty seats beside Miss Everly, facing Nathaniel and Arya. Ethan, Isla, Anna, and Alex were seated on the other side of the aisle, while Williams, Andrew, Noria, Anita, and Dawn occupied the seats directly behind Ethan's group. Meanwhile, Andrew, Jake, and Anton sat in the row behind Nathaniel. Tom and Dr. Hart were in a private cabin near the front of the craft, and Miss Bella was with Tom. Tristan had been assigned one of the private cabins as well, but chose to sit with his dad before the craft lifted from the ground. A smile stretched across Nathaniel's lips as Esme screwed up her face at the slight shift in cabin pressure. Unlike her brothers, who made quiet fussing sounds, she merely looked annoyed. Thankfully, the pressure normalized quickly due to Nathaniel's foresight. The boys settled down, and Esme's eyes fluttered open. "Sorry, Princess. You can go to sleep now. Daddy's got you," he whispered, his face alight with a smile as his little girl gave him a curious, scrutinizing look before smiling softly and shutting her eyes again. He felt Arya reach over to interlace her fingers with his. Glancing in her direction, he caught her watching him and Esme with a lazy smile. Nathaniel's expression shifted as he gave her a languid stare, his gaze flicking from her eyes to her lips. "You two look adorable together," Arya said. Nathaniel winked in response, making her giggle as she gently stroked the back of his hand. "Dad, can we get up now?" Liam asked, trying to unbuckle his seatbelt. Owen looked up from the book in his hands, calmly observing his brother. "You can get up when the pilot says it's okay. Give it a minute, son," Nathaniel replied. "Okay, Dad," Liam said, settling back. Owen offered him a book, which Liam accepted and began flipping through. Arya, watching the interaction, smiled fondly at the two. "He is so restless," Miss Everly remarked with a smile, reaching out to stroke Liam's hair. Liam giggled and beamed at her. "Are we going to stay at Grandpa's house, Big Mama?" Liam asked curiously. "I suppose so," the older woman replied, her gaze shifting to Arya, silently seeking confirmation. Arya gave a sheepish smile and turned her attention to Nathaniel. "We will be staying at your grandpa's house," Nathaniel confirmed with amusement. "Cool. Liam and I can play in the snow with Esme, Manson, and Landon. We can show them Mum's treehouse," Liam exclaimed excitedly. "That sounds wonderful, Liam, but Landon, Manson, and Esme are still too little to play outside in the snow," Miss Everly replied gently. "They can come into the treehouse, though," Liam insisted. "Of course," Miss Everly said, stroking his hair again. "Don't worry, Liam. You'll have plenty of time to play with your brothers and sister. You just need to give them a few months," Nathaniel added reassuringly. Liam nodded eagerly. "We can go sleigh riding and skating and make snowmen." He counted on his fingers, his excitement growing. Owen lowered his book, his attention shifting to the conversation. "We can put them on the swings too," Owen chimed in. Liam nodded eagerly at his brother's suggestion, his enthusiasm growing as Owen began adding more ideas. "It's going to be like old times," Liam said with a fond smile, glancing toward his mum. "It's good we have Dad with us this time," he added. "Yeah," Owen agreed, nodding. Arya felt tears prick the back of her eyes, and Nathaniel's heart constricted at Liam's innocent statement. "Aunt Anita will make her drink for us when we have our pajama party," Liam said with an animated smile. "Aunt Anita is going home, though," Anita called from her seat, her voice carrying over. "Nuh-uh, you're staying with us, Aunt Anita," Liam replied with a scowl, making Andrew, Jake, and Anton laugh from their seats. "Right, Mom? Aunt Anita is staying with us," Owen added, looking at Arya for backup. "Oh, she better, or we'll ban her from entering the treehouse," Arya teased, grinning. Everyone burst into laughter. "Damn, that's cold," Anita replied, shaking her head but smiling. "Am I at least allowed to go see my people?" Anita quipped. "We have to come with you," Liam said firmly. Anita laughed. "So that's how it is, huh?" "Yes," the twins replied in unison, smiling brightly. Everyone burst into laughter. "They love their Aunt Anita, don't blame them now," Miss Everly chimed in with a warm smile. "I knew those two were going to be a handful the moment I met them," Anita bemoaned dramatically. Two tiny, adorable little bundles, swaddled up snugly like the most precious gifts ever. Her exaggerated tone made the twins giggle. Nathaniel couldn't help but smile as he watched their delighted response. Andrew smiled across the aisle at Anita, enjoying how the twins showed their affection towards her. It warmed his heart, confirming what he already knew. Anita was an exceptional soul. He felt grateful for the twist of fate that had brought her into his life and knew, without a shred of doubt, that she would be the best mother to their children. Catching Andrew's gaze, Anita threw him a flirtatious smile, batting her eyelashes. Andrew felt his body respond instinctively to her playful look, forcing him to shift in his seat. His eyes locked with hers, and Anita's heart sped up as his darkened gaze lingered on her, filled with intent. "How long before we get to Sylvan Ridge?" Anita asked, her voice breaking the charged silence between them. Andrew lowered his gaze, his broad shoulders shaking with silent laughter. "Gosh, I love this woman," he thought to himself. "We just started," Anton quipped from his seat nearby. "Dang it," Anita muttered in frustration, drawing an amused chuckle from Andrew that didn't escape Anton's notice. Just then, the sound of the intercom crackled to life and the pilot's voice filled the cabin. "Folks, we've reached cruising altitude. Feel free to move around the cabin, unfasten your seatbelts if needed, and use your electronic devices. Sit back, relax, and let us know if you need anything." Liam and Owen turned their expectant gazes towards their dad, Liam already gripping the buckle of his seatbelt, ready to spring into action. "Fine, go on," Nathaniel relented, his tone firm. "But remember, don't touch anything. If you need anything at all, come straight to me, Mom, or find Uncle Andrew, Uncle Jake, Uncle Aiden, or Uncle Anton. Got it?" "Yes, Daddy," the two chorused in unison before eagerly unfastening their seatbelts and bolting off down the aisle. "Where are they so eager to go off to anyway?" Ethan asked as he peered down the center aisle. Dawn did the same and smiled when she saw them running towards her dad's cabin. "I think they've gone to see my dad," she said with a fond smile. "Oh boy, they found out?" Nathaniel remarked, turning to look down the aisle as well. "Yes," Dawn replied. "I'm surprised they didn't come to grill me about his injuries," Nathaniel quipped. "Oh, they came to me for that," Dawn said. "According to them, their Uncle Jake, Uncle Andrew, Uncle Anton, and Uncle Aiden had taken care of the person, so it couldn't be me. Then they wanted to know if I was the one who got their Grandpa Hill into trouble because they remembered I lied about getting into a fight with a cat." Light laughter resounded in the enclosed space. "How were you able to get out of that one?" Anna asked. "I chickened out and told them I had no idea what they were talking about, and Liam said, and I quote, 'I will find out, Aunt Dawn. Mark my word.'" A round of laughter erupted in the cabin. "Well, you should know I plan to tell him," Jake quipped with devilish relish. Dawn gasped before breaking into a fit of giggles. The rest of the men burst out laughing. "What are they hiding from the twins?" Isla whispered to Ethan as she leaned into him, a smile animating her face. Ethan directed his attention to her, a smile spreading on his face as he enjoyed the way her expression brightened. He thought about how she looked, beautiful in a natural, effortless way. Even without makeup, she radiated a quiet grace. Her hair, piled atop her head in a bun, emphasized the shape of her face with her high cheekbones, straight nose, and full lips. He found himself momentarily lost in the thought of pressing his lips to hers and savoring the decadent flesh before shaking himself back to the conversation. His voice was soft and sounded huskier than usual. "Dawn got into a fight with a lady Liam and Owen have it out for," Ethan whispered back, not wanting to explain about Christine Powell. "The rat." Isla giggled softly. "Are you serious?" she quipped. 100%. You're lucky they both like you. Or maybe Arya had a long talk with them and threatened them to behave around you," Ethan joked. Isla covered her mouth, laughing, the sound light and carefree, making Ethan's heart soar with fondness. Jake felt his phone vibrate in the inner pocket of his jacket. He pulled it out, glancing down the center aisle toward Evangeline's cabin, wondering if the message was from her and if she needed him for something. Shifting his gaze back to the screen, he saw the message was from Brooke. The text read that Brooke had tracked Luke Greetham to an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Luke had been storing firearms there with his group, and had recently paid a visit to Dr. Williams' hospital. According to the message, Luke had left the hospital visibly angry. The final update made Jake pause, staring at the screen for nearly a minute. If Luke's mission had been unclear before, it wasn't now. The message revealed that Luke was trying to hire a plane. Jake's mind immediately started working through the implications. Luke didn't have the money to store up ammunition and charter planes, which meant the supposed powerful individual who helped him escape was also sponsoring him. If old man Powell was still alive, Jake would have considered him the prime suspect. Christine was another possibility, but she seemed too preoccupied at the moment to be involved. The third potential culprit was Sean, but Jake doubted Sean would be reckless enough to provoke Nathaniel so soon after their recent confrontation. Jake found himself at a loss. He couldn't think of anyone who might be pulling Luke Greetham's strings. He figured that whoever it was must either have a personal grudge against Evangeline or intended to use her as leverage against him. But then Jake's relationship with Evangeline wasn't public knowledge yet, so whoever was behind this had to be someone who had connected the dots after his visit to Luke Greetham. They must have figured out that Evangeline mattered to him. However, the only thing Jake had made clear during that visit was that Evangeline was under the protection of the Hawthornes. This left Jake with two possibilities. Either the attacker wanted to target Evangeline to provoke Nathaniel, or they were aiming to use her to get to Jake. Regardless of the motive, Jake despised not knowing who was so determined to get him or Evangeline that they would go as far as breaking Luke Greetham out. His gaze shifted to Andrew. Jake realized it might be time to bring Andrew into the loop about what was happening. Meanwhile, on the second craft, as soon as the pilot announced they had reached cruising altitude and passengers could leave their seats, Yen watched as Charles approached Claire. He gently pulled her up, his eyes locked on hers as he said, "My apologies, Dr. Yen. I need to borrow Claire for a bit." Yen knew he didn't really need her permission. He was just being polite. She waved them off and turned her attention to the small TV screen embedded in the headrest in front of her. As she browsed through the listed movies, a smile spread across her face at the selection. It included timeless classics and even some unreleased films. Excitement bubbled inside her as she chose one, only for her heart to nearly stop when a familiar scent enveloped her. Dear God, she thought to herself in mild panic. Will had taken the empty seat beside her. Her heart rate quickened and she hesitated before sitting back slowly. When she finally mustered the courage to glance sideways, her gaze met his and he returned her scrutiny. His copper-toned irises darkened with an intensity that sent a delicious shiver through her. He looked like a predator, and Yen knew all too well how beastly he could be. His telltale mark lingered on her. Gosh, he's so intimidatingly handsome, she thought. Question, Will said, leaning in, leaving just a few inches between their faces. Are we pretending what happened between us never did, or are we going to talk about it? His voice was low and deep. Yen froze, unsure of what exactly he wanted to discuss. She had gotten drunk and made a colossal fool of herself. Not exactly her preferred topic of conversation. Noting her hesitation, he sighed. Is there going to be a repeat, Dr. Yen? He asked, his tone probing. Yen didn't like how cornered she felt. First, she wondered what he must think of her. That she was someone who casually hopped into bed with anyone. His question unsettled her further. Did he really expect her to just say yes? Even if she did want to repeat, she couldn't just blurt it out like that. What kind of foundation would that lay for whatever might develop between them? Will watched her hesitate to respond to his question, and a familiar unease settled in the pit of his stomach. The same feeling he'd had when he woke up to find her gone. He suspected she might have been too drunk the previous night to fully understand what they were doing, let alone give consent to what had happened between them. The thought made him uncomfortable, almost as if he had taken advantage of her. Even though she had begged him to take her, he found her attractive, irresistibly so, and had been caught off guard by how quickly she'd unraveled his self-control. That night he'd given in, partly because it had been a refreshing surprise to lose control for once. The way she had loved him so fervently, with a passion that left him feeling unmoored and hungry for more, had drowned out the voice of caution in his head. Still, her reaction now confused him. If she truly hadn't been aware of what they did in those early hours, why had she let him have her again in the morning? When he woke up, what had seemed like a vivid, heated dream turned out to be very real. The lingering evidence of their intimacy left no doubt on his mind. Their morning coupling had been so intense, so deeply satisfying, that it had blown him away. He wanted a repeat of that connection, the vulnerability they had shared, the way she had made him feel alive and out of control in her arms. It felt good. So damn good. But now he had no idea where they stood. Her hesitation, her apparent shame, suggested it might not be the same for her, and that realization unsettled him even more. "Will?" Stephen called from the front of the cabin, and Will held up a hand to indicate he was coming. Giving Yen a sidelong glance, he smiled at her. "I understand," he said with a nod, starting to rise from his seat. Yen's hand shot out to stop him, resting on his lap. Will halted his action, his gaze shifting to her hand, before lifting it to meet her eyes. "I was drunk." "Tune, what happened isn't something I would normally do," she managed to say in a hushed tone, her eyes darting nervously as she searched his face for a reaction. Will nodded slowly. "Me neither. I'm sorry I didn't resist harder," he said, his voice tinged with regret. Yen caught the intensity of his gaze and gave him a fleeting smile. Her hand moved slightly, her fingers stroking his thigh in a soothing, almost absent-minded motion. "Thank you, but..." Yen began, then trailed off as she glanced towards the front of the cabin, where more of the Hawthorne guards were beginning to gather. Will followed her gaze, his expression steady. "Don't worry. Say what you want to say," he encouraged gently. She met his eyes and smiled again. "I have no regrets," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Relief washed over Will. He didn't like the idea of having taken advantage of her, even though she had been the one to ask for it. "Thank you, I needed to hear that," he said, his tone soft. Placing a hand over hers, he patted it gently. "See you around, Dr. Yen," he said, then slipped away. Yen watched him go, a strange unease settling deep inside her. She realized she hadn't fully answered his unspoken question and felt a flicker of fear over how he might interpret that. When Claire returned to her seat, she flashed Yen a shy smile, and Yen narrowed her eyes playfully and leaned over to sniff Claire's shoulder, making the other woman giggle. "Stop," Claire said, chuckling. "You're nasty," Yen teased. "It's broad daylight," she quipped. "We've gone way past that limitation now," Claire replied with a wink. Yen covered her mouth, laughing. "I saw Will come over," Claire said, wiggling her eyebrows as she nudged Yen with her elbow. "Is it official or what?" she teased. "I don't think so," Yen replied with an awkward smile. "Oh, why?" Claire asked, her posture deflating with disappointment. Yen shrugged. "It was a wonderful, earth-shattering experience, you know. But what must he think of me?" she whispered. "Girl, what did he say?" Claire demanded in a loud whisper. "He wanted to know if I was interested in a repeat. I didn't really get a chance to answer that, but I did tell him I was drunk, and it's unlike me to be that wanton," Yen explained. Claire gaped at her. "He came here to literally ask if you wanted him. And you what?" she exclaimed, her mouth hanging open. "I swear to God, Claire, keep your voice down," Yen hissed through gritted teeth, glancing nervously towards the front of the cabin. Claire grabbed a folded magazine and playfully smacked Yen on the head with it. "Hey, what's that for?" Yen protested. "I'm trying to knock some sense into you, that's what," Claire replied in a teasing drawl. "You'll be a fool if you let him go. That's all I'm going to say," she added with finality. Yen sighed, her gaze drifting toward the front of the cabin, where her eyes settled on Will. He stood with the other men, his arms folded over his chest, a frown of concentration creasing his forehead as he listened to whatever Charles was saying. Her eyes trailed down his form, her breath quickening as vivid memories of him naked flooded her mind. The bulging pectorals, the long, muscled body holding her effortlessly as though she weighed nothing. As if sensing her gaze, Will turned his head in her direction. Yen quickly lowered her eyes, her face burning with embarrassment. About 4 hours into the journey, Nathaniel was chatting with Alex and Ethan, while Esme remained snugly wrapped against his chest. Their soft laughter echoed through the cabin, mingling with the lively voices of Tristan, Liam, and Owen as they played in an empty section of the cabin just down the left row of the seats. Suddenly, Anna raised her hand to get Nathaniel's attention, gesturing toward his chest. The men paused their conversation as Nathaniel glanced down, noticing Esme looking up at him with curious scrutiny. His face lit up with a warm smile. "Hello there. Are you listening to Dad talk with Uncle Alex and Uncle Ethan?" Nathaniel teased in a mellowed tone. Arya chuckled and interjected, "It's not just Esme, my love." Nathaniel shifted his gaze, noticing Manson and Landon's curious eyes also fixed on him. The others chuckled softly as Nathaniel beamed with fondness. "They love his voice," Anita said with a grin. "Remember, Miss Everly, that day they wanted Nate to keep talking and crying whenever he stopped?" she added in amusement. "Yes, I remember," Miss Everly replied warmly. "I remember you told me about that," Arya added with a smile, reaching for Nathaniel's hand. He interlaced his fingers with hers, lifted her hand, and pressed a kiss on the back of it. Esme's eyes darted from her dad to her mum, then she shut her eyes and smiled. When she opened them again, Nathaniel and Arya chuckled. Landon, meanwhile, watched with curiosity, probably wondering what his sister was doing that amused the adults so much. Mason reached out a hand toward his dad. "Oh boy," Nathaniel quipped. Arya chuckled. "All right, son, Dad's coming. I need to get up anyway," Nathaniel said as he rose. Letting go of Arya's hand, he threw her an affectionate smile, and she returned it with a loving smile. Arya watched as Nathaniel lifted Mason from her aunt's arms, holding him snugly to his side. Landon lifted his head to watch, his little brows furrowed. Arya smiled brightly, wondering if he, too, wanted to be picked up by his dad, but Landon rested his head back on his mum's chest, burrowing deeper into his kangaroo wrap. "You're going to be Mama's boy, aren't you, son?" Nathaniel teased, leaning over to stroke Landon's hair. The baby turned his face away, making everyone laugh. "All right, I get the message. Leaving you alone to enjoy snuggles with Mom. I hope you remember, though, she is mine first," Nathaniel quipped, making everyone laugh. Straightening up, he strode down the center aisle, holding Mason to his side, with Esme swaddled in the kangaroo wrap against his chest. Andrew, Jake, and Aidan stood to follow him. Nathaniel decided to check on Tom and Dr. Hart as he continued down the aisle. The cabin crew who were wheeling out meals paused to let him pass. "Mr. Hawthorne," they chorused in acknowledgement as Nathaniel walked past. He merely nodded, heading toward Tom's cabin, his tall, imposing form exuding power. Andrew hurried ahead to rap his knuckles against the door panel to announce their presence. "Come in, please," Tom's muffled voice called from within. As Andrew opened the door, they saw the older man attempting to get up with Miss Bella's assistance. "Where are you going?" Andrew asked, a note of concern in his voice. "I'm tired of feeling stuck in here," Tom replied with a frustrated sigh. Nathaniel chuckled softly, drawing Tom's attention. When Tom looked up and saw Nathaniel carrying Esme and one of the boys, a fond smile brightened his face. "Now who do we have here?" Tom said warmly, just as Miss Bella reached up to stroke Esme's curls, then tried to take Mason from Nathaniel's arms. The little boy started fussing immediately. The older woman pressed a hand to her chest in mock offense. "Really? That's how it is?" Nathaniel and the other men laughed as Mason clung tightly to his dad, burying his face against Nathaniel's arm. And Esme shut her eyes, feigning sleep. "Sorry, Grandma Bella, it's Daddy's turn today," Nathaniel quipped with a grin. Tom chuckled and reached out a hand toward Mason. "What about me? Am I allowed to carry you, little one?" he asked gently. Mason glanced at Tom as if considering the offer, then looked away. The group burst into laughter at the boy's reaction. When Andrew held out his hands to Mason, the boy hesitated before slowly leaning toward him. Nathaniel threw his head back, laughing. "I get it. I can't even argue with that choice," Tom said with a smile. They spent a few more minutes chatting before Nathaniel turned to Tom and asked, "How are you feeling?" "I'm doing better," Tom replied. "Come, let's move around together," Nathaniel suggested, holding out his hand to the older man. Tom's heart constricted with emotion as he accepted the offer. Nathaniel then guided Tom toward Dr. Hart's cabin. Jake, who had gone ahead to inform her of their visit, stood by the cabin door. He nodded in acknowledgement to Nathaniel and Tom as they approached and slid the door open. Inside, Dr. Hart was comfortably settled on a luxurious seat, evidently designed with indulgence in mind. The plush upholstery, complete with a supportive headrest and extendable footrest, provided maximum ease and relaxation. The chair featured an adjustable reclining mechanism and built-in massage functionality, ideal for soothing her during the flight. A soft blanket was draped over her lap, and a small side table beside her held a bottle of water and a neatly arranged fruit platter. A personal TV screen was mounted on a swivel arm for convenient viewing, and noise-cancelling headphones rested on the armrest, ready for her to listen to music or enjoy in-flight entertainment. Nathaniel had specifically requested all the added features on the jet with Aria in mind, but he was pleased to see Dr. Hart benefiting from them as well. "I trust you're comfortable, Dr. Hart," Nathaniel asked with a playful smile. Jake and the other men chuckled when she grinned and replied, "Oh, very comfortable." Nathaniel nodded in satisfaction. "Glad to hear it," he quipped. "It's nice to see you up and about, Mr. Hill," Evangeline said warmly. "Thank you, Dr. Hart," Tom replied with a grateful smile. They stayed to chat with her briefly before Nathaniel and Tom moved to another cabin. The door was left ajar, and inside, Tristan, Owen, and Liam were huddled together over an iPad, whispering animatedly. "What are you boys up to now?" Nathaniel asked, a note of concern in his voice. "Good question. It must be something serious if Liam's smiling like that," Jake added with a teasing grin. Liam gasped theatrically. "We've been good, I promise," he protested. "We were just..." Tristan began, but Owen suddenly gasped, his eyes glued to the iPad screen. "What is it?" Nathaniel asked, his curiosity piqued. "Aunt Noria passed her exams," Liam announced smugly. "What did you say?" Aidan called from the back, stepping closer. Liam held up the iPad as he, Owen, and Tristan bolted out of the cabin shouting, "Aunt Noria, you passed!" "How did they even get her credentials?" Aidan asked in awe. "Please don't ask," Anton replied with a proud smile. The enclosed space erupted in cheers of congratulations. Noria stood in the aisle wide-eyed and stunned, as if silently seeking confirmation. Aidan nodded, and Noria's face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. "Congratulations, Noria," Nathaniel called out. Noria knelt, gathering Liam and Owen into a tight embrace. "You too." "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Aidan strode over to join them, smiling fondly. "Phew! I was this close to starting a petition," Liam said, gesturing comically with his hands, earning laughter from everyone. "He's not joking," Owen confirmed solemnly, just as Arya turned a narrowed gaze in his direction. Owen gasped. "Uh-oh, busted!" Liam exclaimed, "Oops!" before both boys darted off toward their dad, with Tristan hurrying after them. "What am I going to do with this boy?" Nathaniel said, laughing. "If only you knew how many times your dad said that about you." "I guess it's karma," Tom quipped. Andrew burst out laughing, nodding in agreement. Aidan pulled Noria into a warm hug, making her smile shyly through her tears. Leaning close to her ear, he whispered, "Congratulations, darling. I'm so proud of you. I guess we're inching closer to those babies I promised you, huh?" he quipped. Noria broke into a fit of giggles, her face flushing with embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the second craft, Yen watched as one of the stewards sashayed down the aisle toward Will for the umpteenth time. The steward bent over, no doubt to display her cleavage, as she collected his used disposable dishes, smiling and saying whatever it took to make him chuckle. Yen thought he had the most beautiful smile and couldn't help but feel it was unfair for a man to be so perfectly put together. Surely there had to be something toxic about him. The more she watched their exchange, the more irritated she became. "Quit growling," Claire complained from her seat. She had reclaimed her spot, turned off the light in their section, and put on an eye mask to sleep. But Yen's constant hissing, huffing, and loud scoffs were making that impossible. And then there was the low growling. "Sorry," Yen mumbled with a sigh. "What's pissing you off so much?" Claire asked as she sat up, removing the eye mask. Then her gaze shifted to Will, seated a few rows away, chatting with a stunning brunette. She let out a knowing sigh. "If I were you, I'd lay claim before he's snatched away. This is a working vacation, and that girl is going to stick around," Claire warned. When she glanced at Yen, she noticed her glaring. "Sorry, just had to warn you," Claire added with a shrug before settling back in her chair. "Growl one more time and I'm going to yell over at him that you're jealous," Claire threatened. "I'm not jealous," Yen quickly denied, though her tone was unconvincing. "The lady is just being shameless," she added defensively. "Uh-huh. And you're Pinocchio. Look, your nose is growing." Claire replied, smirking. Yen rolled her eyes, folded her arms, and leaned back in her chair, determined not to glance in Will's direction again. Hours later, when the pilot announced they had arrived at Sylvan Ridge, Yen let out a loud sigh of relief. After the craft made a smooth landing, Charles announced that everyone who wasn't a Hawthorne guard should remain in their seats. The new stewards began assisting with hand luggage, and when Adam came to help Claire and Yen waved shyly at him. He returned her wave with a warm smile. "I hope you enjoyed the flight, Dr. Yen," he said, his voice a comforting blend of warmth and cool sincerity. "Yes, thank you, Adam," Yen replied. He nodded with a smile. Later, when they were finally allowed to start disembarking, Adam and Charles stood at the bottom of the stairs outside the craft. Yen took a sharp breath as the cold air hit her face. They had landed in a private area of the airport, and the ground was covered in snow as far as the eye could see. She also noticed rows of black jeeps lined up waiting for them. "Man, this is amazing," she thought as she began to climb down the stairs. She almost tripped, but Adam caught her, lifting her up and gently setting her down on solid ground. Yen's face flushed with embarrassment. "Are you okay?" Adam asked. "Yes, I am, thank you," Yen replied, her voice tinged with mortification. She hurried to join Claire and Rowan. As she looked ahead, she saw Will standing by one of the black jeeps, watching her intently before he turned away. Yen soon discovered that Will was riding in the same jeep as her, along with Claire, Charles, Rowan, and Adam. He stood by the door to help Claire and then her into the jeep. However, Yen could sense the cold withdrawal from him and the way he addressed her as Dr. Yen, which seemed to have shifted from casual flirtation to a more formal tone. She felt deeply uneasy about it. She tried to meet his gaze, but he pulled out a dark sunshade and put them on. Soon, all the jeeps began to move. The car carrying Nathaniel, Ariana, the kids, Dr. Hart, Jake, and Miss Everly led the line of jeeps. Andrew had taken over as the driver, while Jake sat in the passenger seat. Both men had their firearms ready at their sides. When they reached the intersection leading into the residential area of Sylvan Ridge, Andrew parked. "Why are we stopping?" Aria asked with concern. "I'm getting down here to join Ethan and Alex. Anna and Isla will join you guys," Nathaniel replied. A profound surge of fear went through Aria. Nathaniel didn't even need her to say anything. Her fear was clearly visible on her face. He leaned in closer and said, "We just want to make an appearance at the Blackwoods house. Give it 15 minutes, and I'll join you back home. I promise." Aria didn't even realize she had gripped his jacket tightly in a fist, holding onto the fabric with a firm, anxious grasp. "I promise, baby," Nathaniel whispered, looking into her eyes with a searching gaze. It took a moment for Aria to nod. Then she looked at Andrew, who had come around to open the door on Nathaniel's side. She saw that Jake had now taken over the wheel, while Adam slipped into the front passenger seat. "I'm going with him, Dr. Hawthorne," Andrew reassured her. Aria nodded. Nathaniel pressed a quick kiss on her lips before getting out of the jeep. Aria noticed she was still gripping his jacket and slowly let go of the fabric. "Dad?" Liam, who had just noticed his father's disembarking, called out from the back where he sat alone with Owen, Miss Everly, and Dr. Hart. "Dad, where are you going?" Owen interjected. "I'll join you at home, sons. I just wanted to make a quick stop at Uncle Ethan's house," Nathaniel explained. "Okay, but don't stay long," Liam called out. "All right, son," Nathaniel replied, his eyes on Aria, who was giving him a fervent, intense stare. Before he shut the door, he repeated 15 minutes, then closed the door. Jake waited for Andrew and Nathaniel to join Ethan and Alex, and for Anna and Isla to join them, before they finally moved forward. Andrew, now in charge of the jeep carrying Ethan and Alex, moved their vehicle aside to allow the other jeeps carrying their guests and household staff to follow Jake's lead. About 5 jeeps drove past them, leaving 2 to line up behind Andrew's jeep. Once the other jeeps disappeared from view, Andrew began driving again, with the 2 trailing jeeps following closely behind. The vehicles sped along as Andrew navigated the familiar terrain, heading towards the posh district of town, where the wealthy supposedly resided. At least that was the case, until Nathaniel Hawthorne found Ariana Everly and reshaped the town's entire structure, much to the irritation of most of its residents. Not that Nathaniel cared. A few minutes later, they passed through a low wooden gate with a sign that read, "Blackwood Manor," and onto the gravel driveway of a state-of-the-art, massive log house. Before Ethan and Nathaniel and Alex could exit the Jeep, 3 familiar figures strode out, followed by a woman with a regal posture walking gracefully behind them. The 3 men glared at Ethan with pure, unfiltered hatred, while the woman appeared only mildly bored. Nathaniel couldn't help but wonder how feral they would become if they knew what was in store for them. "What are you doing here?" one of the men yelled. It was Benedict. Nathaniel glanced at his watch and announced, "I've got 10 more minutes. Now where the hell is he?" As the words left his mouth, another car pulled up and a man with white hair hurried out. A sheriff's car followed close behind, along with 4 other police trucks. Ethan didn't know the specifics of Nathaniel's plan, but he felt a wave of satisfaction seeing the flicker of fear in Diana's eyes. He smirked. Greg Downton, the well-known Sylvan Ridge lawyer, stepped forward and announced, "Mrs. Blackwood, gentlemen, this is a court-sanctioned immediate eviction notice. As per the order, you are required to vacate the premises without delay. I strongly advise against any resistance or interference." Before anyone could respond, the sheriff stepped forward and added firmly, "The police are here to ensure this process remains peaceful. Please comply with the notice to avoid any unnecessary escalation." Diana scoffed loudly, her disdain evident. "Peace? You're here to ensure peace? This is our home. Ian owns this house and I am his wife. He is not dead. Who has the audacity to evict us from our own property?" she snapped, her voice dripping with contempt. "Who do you think summoned me, huh?" Ethan said, stepping forwards. "What?" Diana exclaimed, her disbelief obvious. Nathaniel observed that they all seemed shocked, except for Benedict. "Where is Ian? Call him out so we can sort this out right now," the lawyer demanded. When Greg attempted to step further into the property, Benedict took an obstructive step forward. "Don't you dare," Benedict began. "Oh, he dares," Nathaniel interrupted, stepping forward. At the same moment, all the Hawthorne guards exited the jeeps, including Andrew, armed with sophisticated firearms. They positioned themselves behind the lawyer. Nathaniel, Alex, and Ethan. Benedict slowly took a step back, his hands tightened to fists by his sides. "Perhaps I should introduce myself, in case you're too dense to figure this out already," Nathaniel said, his voice calm yet menacing. "I'm Nathaniel Hawthorne, a friend and brother to the owner of this house, Ethan Blackwood. Now move and get Ian out here, or you will be moved." "Where is Ian?" Ethan demanded, his gaze fixed on Benedict, noting his stance and suspecting he might have done something terrible to his father. Andrew observed Benedict's rigid stance, the clenching of his jaw, the hate-filled, menacing glare, and immediately understood that the man had done something to Ian Blackwood. He also seemed to know far more than his brothers or mother. The fool must have assumed he would be next in line and had been paying closer attention, unlike the rest of them. 8 minutes, Nathaniel announced. Andrew shot a glance at Aidan and Charles, prompting both men to spring into action while he stayed near Nathaniel, positioning himself defensively. Aidan had been anticipating the moment he'd come face-to-face with Benedict Blackwood, the coward who had tried to run Ethan down with Isla in the car. Aidan stepped forward, maneuvering himself between Benedict and the lawyer. Looming over Benedict with an imposing presence, he forced the man to step back. "Nice to finally meet you, Benedict," Aidan said, pulling out a photograph and shoving it into Benedict's chest. "This is a fantastic shot of you caught on the surveillance camera trying to kill Ethan Blackwood. I hope you enjoy your one-room apartment when this is all over," he added with a sharp edge to his tone. "And pray for a great boyfriend," he added. Benedict trembled with rage, his glare fixed on Aidan. "What?" one of his brothers exclaimed in disbelief. "Can someone tell me what the hell is going on?" Another shouted. "Don't let them provoke you, boys. He's clearly lying," Diana interjected, though the faint crease in her brow betrayed her concern and unease. Meanwhile, Charles had stepped aside, phone in hand, making a call to the hauling and house cleaning company they had on standby. 5 minutes, Charles stated firmly. Moments later, several large white trucks appeared at the end of the lane. "You can't throw us out of our home." "I won't allow it," Benedict roared, his icy glare locking onto Ethan. "Your home," Ethan echoed with a scoff. "Ian isn't even your father." he snapped, drawing shocked reactions from Kane and Timothy, the other two Blackwood instigators. "What?" they both exclaimed at once. Diana looked visibly flustered as everyone turned their gaze to her. "Ian found out about 5 years ago. I'm sure Benny Boy here already knew. That's why he tried to kill Ethan." Nathaniel cut in sharply, stepping forward with Andrew close behind. "You made one critical mistake, Benny," Nathaniel added, his tone ice cold. "You didn't factor me into the equation." He jeered with a smirk. "Get inside and start clearing it out," Charles commanded. "Clothes, personal belongings, everything and everyone comes out now. We've got 4 minutes," he shouted as 15 men emerged from the hauling vans. "Move! Move! Move!" he urged, sending the team into action. Benedict reached behind his back under his shirt, clearly attempting to draw a weapon, but Aidan was faster. Grabbing him by the neck with one hand, Aidan slid his other gloved hand under Benedict's shirt, gripping the handle of the gun. With a sharp tug, he pulled the weapon free, then struck Benedict on the side of the head with his elbow. Dazed, Benedict dropped to his knees. "Hands behind your back," Aidan snarled, his voice low and menacing. Kane and Timothy started forward to help, but 2 Hawthorne guards raised their guns, freezing them in place. "On your knees," Andrew barked. Reluctantly, the brothers sank to their knees, moving slowly. "Leave my sons alone," Diana screamed. "I'll sue every last one of you," she threatened, her voice shrill with fury. "With due respect, ma'am, I'm going to need you to shut up," Will snapped as he advanced toward her, forcing her to retreat into a corner. Soon the household staff began to trickle out, confusion evident on their faces as they were ushered from the property. "Maintain a line and keep walking. Don't stop until you're out of the Blackwoods property," Charles barked, his voice sharp and commanding like a drill sergeant's. "What's going on?" the workers murmured among themselves, their voices low as 2 Hawthorne guards led them toward the exit gate. "Where is your boss?" "Where is Ian Blackwood?" Ethan bellowed. "He's in his room," one maid replied hesitantly. "Take me to him," Will ordered, pulling the maid out of the lineup. Ethan's fists clenched tightly as his gaze snapped to Benedict. If nothing was wrong with Ian, he would have made an appearance by now. "What did you do to him?" Ethan demanded, his voice heavy with accusation. "He didn't do anything." "Ian is just sick," Diana interjected quickly, her tone defensive now that Will was out of earshot. She cast a nervous glance at one of the Hawthorne guards who had moved closer, making her swallow hard. "Sick with what?" Alex pressed, his voice laced with suspicion. "There must be a name for the sickness, right?" Ethan added sharply. "Maybe he's depressed because his slut died," Benedict sneered, a smirk twisting his features. Ethan's jaw tightened, fury simmering beneath the surface. Without warning, Aidan grabbed Benedict's hands, wrenching them behind his back. Benedict cried out in pain as Aidan snapped cuffs onto his wrists, pulling his arms so hard that Benedict bellowed in agony. "I said, put your hands where I can see them." Aidan growled, acting as though Benedict had made a threatening move. The sheriff and his deputies tried to get a clear view of what was happening, but the imposing frames of the Hawthorne guards blocked their line of sight. The guards stood in formation, like a human shield, making it impossible for anyone to push through. When one of Benedict's brothers yelled, "Hey, you're hurting him," he received a hard smack to the back of the head, leaving him dazed. He dipped his head, disoriented, while the other brother looked up to meet Andrew's icy stare and swallowed nervously. "Shut up," Andrew snarled, his voice dripping with menace. Inside the house, Will followed the maid through the opulent interior, taking in the grand staircase and massive chandeliers suspended from the high ceiling. The living room was dimly lit, with a modest fireplace flickering faintly, and the walls adorned with family photos and paintings. The maid led him up the stairs and down a long hallway to a room with a dark brown mahogany door. She pushed it open and gestured for Will to enter. A foul stench of an unwashed body mingled with the sharp scent of chemicals assaulted his senses. The room was steeped in darkness, save for the soft glow of a bedside lamp, illuminating the figure lying on the bed, covered by a drape. "Open the drapes," Will ordered. The maid quickly moved to comply, pulling the curtains aside and flooding the room with daylight. The light revealed a neglected and dusty space, with Ian's emaciated body lying still on the bed, covered from the chest down. Will pulled up the face mask hanging around his neck, securing it in place before tugging the covers off Ian. The older man groaned softly, his eyes fluttering open. His lips were ashen, his face drained of color, and his body appeared terribly frail, as though he hadn't eaten or drunk water in days. "Do you people even bother to feed him?" Will growled, his voice sharp with anger. "Only Mrs. Blackwood and Mr. Blackwood's children are allowed in here, sir," the maid replied, her voice trembling. "Ian?" Will leaned over him, speaking firmly. "Can you hear me? Help!" Ian croaked weakly. Without hesitation, Will wrapped Ian in the blankets and lifted him off the bed with ease. "Look in the dresser drawers, all of them," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Pack every medication, every single thing you find. If you try to hide anything, I swear I'll snap your neck like a twig." The maid visibly shook, stammering, Yes, sir," before hurrying to do as she was told. Will stood by, waiting as she quickly packed the items. Once finished, he gestured for her to lead the way out of the house. Together they retraced their steps, moving quickly toward the exit. When they got outside, Will shouted, "He needs medical attention," as he carried Ian toward one of the jeeps they had brought along. "Sheriff, Ethan growled. "I want these 4 arrested for attempted murder," he bellowed, his voice laced with anger. Though he told himself he didn't care about Ian Blackwood, a surge of emotion rose within him at the sight of Ian in such a pitiful state. The sheriff and his deputies stood frozen, mouths agape, as they took in Ian Blackwood's frail, still form. Will gently laid him down in the back seat of a jeep, ensuring he was settled properly before stepping back. He then took the medications, papers, and injection vials, bundled in a pillowcase, from the maid, and carefully placed them in the jeep. At Ethan's command, the sheriff and his men turned toward Benedict, his brothers, and Diana. "We didn't do anything to him," Diana snapped defensively. "He's the one who refused to eat," she added in a sharp tone. "I suppose that explains why the first thing he did was ask for help," Will shot back coldly. "Arrest them now," Ethan roared, his fury undeniable. "You think you're some kind of hotshot because you're friends with the Hawthornes, but let me remind you, you're nothing but trash and will always be trash." "This is my territory," Benedict growled, his voice dripping with anger as Aidan yanked him to his feet. He groaned loudly in pain. "Your territory?" Ethan scoffed. "You don't even have a house. Speaking of trash, your mother knows that word well, doesn't she? She's everything you wish my mother was, isn't she, Benny boy? Dirt poor, slutty, a cunning snake who passed off bastards as sons to a man she was desperate to keep tied down," Ethan said with cold disdain. "How dare you!" Diana shrieked, her fury palpable. "You son of a bitch, you'll pay for this!" Kane shouted, his face flushed red with rage. "This isn't over. Don't think you've won." Timothy spat as they were shoved toward the waiting police car. The lawyer let out a long sigh of relief, clearly glad the situation hadn't escalated into violence. 2 minutes, Nathaniel barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Is everybody out?" Charles shouted. "Yes," one of the hauling crew members called back. "Great, that was done in record time. Paolo, send in your cleaners now. Let's move," Charles ordered. The police cars were the first to leave, followed by the hauling vans. The house cleaning crews remained behind with the lawyer and the new security team, who were there to take over the property. Nathaniel, Ethan, Alex, and the others climbed into their car. As Andrew drove them off the grounds, the new security men locked the gate behind them. Ethan glanced out the window at the confused workers left standing outside. "Do we have plans for the workers, Nate? Not that they deserve any consideration. They were just as complicit," he remarked coldly. "Yes, the lawyer will take care of them." "Don't worry about it," Nathaniel replied. "Are we taking Ian to the hospital first?" Alex asked with concern, glancing at the jeep ahead of them where Will had placed Ian. "Yes, we'll drop him off at Aria's dad's hospital and then go get her," Nathaniel answered. "He looked terrible. What could they have done to him?" Alex said rhetorically, shaking his head in disbelief. Aria, Liam, and Owen gaped at the tall wrought iron gate framing the side of the road as they approached the path leading to their formerly modest home. Aria, along with the twins, pressed their faces to the side window, mouths agape, as Jake continued driving them down the lane. The sides of the road were now lined with tall palm trees, reminiscent of the ones back home in New York. "Mom," Owen whispered in awe, as Jake drove through the gate and onto a stone-paved road flanked by snow-covered edges. Soon enough, they arrived at the house, but instead of the modest one-story log building they had left, they found a transformed structure. The once modest one-story log house had been transformed into a sprawling architectural masterpiece that seamlessly blended rustic charm with modern sophistication. The exterior was a stunning combination of stone bricks, warm wooden beams, and expansive glass panels. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls gleamed under the dull daylighting, revealing an expansive living room with soaring ceilings, where the interplay of light and natural textures created a captivating ambience. The stone facade exuded timeless elegance, its rough-hewn surface softened by wooden accents and shutters. Glass-framed corners offered uninterrupted views of the lush surroundings, their transparency a stark yet harmonious contrast to the rugged brickwork. The house radiated a perfect balance of earthy solidity and contemporary openness. Perhaps you might want to step out and check it out?" Jake quipped as he parked. Everyone began trickling out of the vehicle, everyone except for the three still in awe. Owen and Liam exchanged a look with their mom before exclaiming in horror, "The tree house!" Anita laughed as the twins scrambled out of the Jeep, followed closely by Aria. The boys ran ahead, but quickly realized their mom wasn't following fast enough. They ran back to grab her by the wrists and pull her along. I'm coming," Aria said, her laughter making everyone else chuckle. Anna and Noria helped Dr. Hart out of the Jeep, followed by Isla. The two ladies then flanked Isla, with Anna holding her hand as they all followed after Aria and the twins. Aria wasn't sure how she felt about the changes Nathaniel had made. The place looked incredible, and the grounds were impeccably maintained, but a part of her couldn't shake the fear that he might have gone too far, erasing the essence of her childhood home and the precious memories tied to it, for her and her twins. And then there was her parents' grave. However, when she reached the treehouse, a sense of relief washed over her. Nathaniel hadn't altered it much. Instead, he had carefully polished it and connected it to a larger, more intricate treehouse via a rickety bridge. The new structure was breathtaking, an artistic masterpiece even from the outside. The inscriptions on the wooden signs beside both treehouses brought tears to her eyes. For the old one, it read, "Where Dreams Began," and for the new one, "Continued Legacy." "Wow!" the twins exclaimed, their voices filled with wonder. When Aria gave them a curious glance, Liam grinned and quipped, "Don't look at us, it's your husband." Everyone laughed. "But it really does look amazing," Owen added before glancing at Aria with a hopeful expression, silently asking for permission to explore. She nodded, and the twins took off eagerly. Two Hawthorne guards followed closely to keep an eye on them. Moments later, the boys leaned out of the window of the new treehouse and shouted, "Mom, you've got to see this." Aria chuckled at their enthusiasm, knowing it must be something special. Leaving the others behind, she started down a narrow path leading away from the house, holding Landon close in a protective embrace. Jake and Adam followed, flanking her quietly as she walked. Her breath rose in soft clouds in the cold air as she took in how beautifully kept the grounds were. When she arrived at a gated gravesite, her heart clenched. Nathaniel had built a glass enclosure over her parents' graves, similar to the one he had constructed for his own parents. Marble monuments stood inside, surrounded by colorful flowers, both within and outside the enclosure. Jake stepped ahead to open the gate, giving her a small nod. Aria returned it, her gratitude silent but sincere, and stepped through. Inside the atrium, the crisp scent of snow mingled with the fragrance of lilies and white roses, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Everything was perfect. So perfect it brought tears to her eyes. As she cried quietly, Jake offered her his handkerchief. She took it with trembling hands, clutching it tightly as though it were her anchor. When she moved closer to the graves, Jake and Adam respectfully stepped back, giving her the solitude she needed. "Dad, Mom, I'm home. With my family, my babies, additional babies," Aria said softly, a small chuckle escaping her lips. "Landon, Mason, and Esme. And of course you already know Owen and Liam. And then there's my husband, a man who has somewhat made himself my heartbeat. My everything." Her voice trembled as emotion filled it. You would have loved him so much, Dad. Mom, he's mine, made only for me. And I'm so blessed to have him, to have him love me back, she whispered, the words laden with love and gratitude. I understand now, Dad. I understand why living without Mom seemed impossible. I understand, she added in almost a whisper. Jake stood silently nearby, taking in her words. He understood exactly what Arya meant, the kind of love she described, one so thoughtful, caring, and all-encompassing it felt beyond logic or explanation. It made him dream of a future where he might also have a family as full of love as hers and be the best man possible to Evangeline. Adam kept his gaze lowered, his hand brushing away a stray tear. He couldn't help but wish for what Arya had described, to find someone who could love him like that, someone who would see him as a man made just for her. It felt like an impossible dream, too far-reaching for someone like him. Yet, as he glanced upward at the atrium's glass ceiling, watching the snow fall gently against the panes, he allowed himself a flicker of hope. If men like Andrew, Aidan, Jake, and Charles had found such love, maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for him, no matter how broken he felt. Silently, he sent a wish upward, hoping that if angels truly existed, they might hear him during this season so often called magical. Landon, meet Grandpa and Grandma, Arya said gently, her voice filled with tenderness. They would have loved to be here to welcome you, your brothers, and Esme. But I believe they're still with us in spirit. Do you think they accept wishes? Adam quipped lightly, his tone breaking the solemnity. Arya chuckled, turning to look at him as she dabbed her eyes with Jake's handkerchief. Jake shook his head, a soft laugh escaping him at the exchange. Do you have a special request, Adam? Arya asked, her voice warm with teasing, her eyes still glistening with tears but now softened by a smile. Yes, Dr. Hawthorne, Adam replied sheepishly, his grin revealing just a hint of playful charm. All right then, I should warn you. My dad was the kind of man who wouldn't rest until he made sure everyone around him was at least cared for. Imagine what kind of spirit being he'd be now, Arya said fondly, a soft smile lighting up her face. He sounds like a great guy, Adam said with a warm smile. He was, Jake agreed. I think I met him back at Harvard when he came to visit you, he added, glancing at Arya with a nostalgic smile. Arya nodded. I think that was the time Nathan made Anna trick me into going shopping, she said with a big grin. Forgive him. He was desperate, Jake quipped, making both Adam and Arya chuckle. Soon Arya said her goodbyes to her parents and left the atrium with Jake and Adam, retracing their steps back toward the others. Man, this place was supposed to be for middle-class families, and now it looks like my husband brought the Hamptons to Sylvan Ridge, Arya said with amusement, her tone tinged with admiration. The earlier fears that had weighed on her heart had dissipated like sand in a storm. Nathaniel had managed to preserve her memories and heritage while weaving them into a breathtaking modern aesthetic. They must be hopping mad at him, she added, pausing to take in her surroundings. Real mad, Jake confirmed with a chuckle. It looks like he even added more land. I don't remember this place being so vast, she said, her awe evident. I think he bought all the surrounding lands. There are smaller versions of the main log house out back, Jake explained. Arya gaped at him. No wonder he didn't seem concerned about the crowd we were bringing here when I mentioned it. The snake, she said, her voice filled with affection, her heart swelled with love for Nathaniel. Jake and Adam laughed. When they returned to the treehouse, Arya's gaze met her aunt's. The older woman gave her a nod of approval, and Arya felt her eyes blur with tears once more. She looked real happy for her, and it made Arya a tad emotional all over again. She darted her gaze up at the treehouse and saw that Tristan had joined Owen and Liam. She automatically scanned the grounds for Justin and found him standing off at a distance, studying the log house. Arya walked up to Justin, who was standing a short distance away surveying the house. When he noticed her, he smirked and said, I see your husband is all about making a statement, and this one is loud. Right, Arya replied with a laugh, their shared humor creating a moment of camaraderie. I'd love to see the inside, Justin admitted, his curiosity evident. Well, you and me both, "There's no time like now," Arya said with a grin, gesturing for him to follow her toward the house. As they walked, Arya asked casually, "Will you be heading home after this, or will you stay and have dinner with us? I don't think Tristan's ready to leave just yet." Justin was quiet for a moment, before finally speaking. "Do you think you could have us for one more night? Tristan's still on medication," he said, his tone cautious. Arya reached out and took his hand in hers. "Come on, Justin, of course you can stay as long as you want," she said, giving his hand a reassuring squeeze. Justin nodded in gratitude, and as Arya let go, she added with a wry smile, "Especially now that I see my husband has apparently built us an empire." Justin chuckled, his laugh joining Jake's and Aiden's. As the four walked through the main door onto the warm wooden floors, Arya's breath caught at the sight of the living room. The luxurious interior was a masterful blend of rustic charm and contemporary elegance. It reminded her of the house at Riverview. Massive exposed wooden beams soared high above, framing the cathedral ceiling. At the center of the room stood a grand stone fireplace, stretching from floor to ceiling, radiating both warmth and a sense of grandeur. The earthy texture of the stone contrasted beautifully with the polished wood, striking a perfect balance between rugged and refined. A cozy yet sophisticated seating arrangement dominated the room, with plush beige couches and armchairs adorned with soft patterned cushions. In the center, a coffee table made from rich reclaimed wood held an arrangement of fresh greenery, adding a touch of life and vibrancy to the space. Overhead, a striking spherical chandelier of wrought iron and wood hung low, casting warm, intricate patterns across the room. To the side, a wrought iron staircase with wooden steps wound gracefully upward to an open loft area. The railing's subtle industrial design added a modern edge to the rustic decor. On either side of the living room, large windows reached skyward, allowing the daylight to flood the space and accentuate the textures of the stone and wood. It was a breathtaking transformation, one that seamlessly blended the familiar comfort of their old home with the bold sophistication of a modern retreat. "Man," Justin muttered under his breath, his tone filled with genuine admiration. Arya turned, her gaze drifting towards the road leading to the compound gate. A nagging sense of incompleteness tugged at her, a feeling that she should be standing there with Nathaniel. Glancing down at the delicate gold wristwatch on her arm, she noted that Nathaniel was 2 minutes late, later than the 15 minutes he'd promised to return. The distant rumble of approaching jeeps pulled her attention back to the road. Her heart lifted when she spotted the familiar vehicle Nathaniel had left with, making its way down the driveway. Arya let out a small sigh of relief, the tension in her shoulders easing as a sense of peace settled over her. "My husband is home," she said softly. Those few words, brimming with emotion, carried a depth that was deeply heartwarming. Jake felt the sentiment and grinned. Early on, in Nathaniel's effort to return to his family as promised, he directed Andrew to ask Will to take Ian Blackwood to the hospital while they went to get Arya. "Would you like to go with Will, Ethan?" Andrew had asked, thinking the younger man should give his father a chance to make amends before it was too late. Ethan met Andrew's gaze in the rearview mirror and held it. "He doesn't deserve that, Andrew," Ethan said flatly. "I'm not saying it for him, Blackwood. Ian might not make it," Andrew replied, his seasoned voice carrying a tinge of warning. Ethan nodded, lowering his gaze before glancing at Nathaniel, who gave him an approving nod. Alex reached out and patted Ethan on the shoulder. "All right then," Ethan relented. They dropped Ethan off with Will and 5 other guards. Then the rest of them headed back to what Nathaniel now referred to as the Everly Ranch. Upon reaching the entrance of the compound, Nathaniel unconsciously glanced at his custom-made gold Rolex. He was 2 minutes late. "I'm sure she can forgive 2 minutes, Nate," Alex quipped. Nathaniel looked up in surprise, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. "How'd you figure that out?" he asked, amused. "I did the math with your not-so-subtle countdown," Alex replied in a calm, mellow tone. Nathaniel and Andrew chuckled. "I don't like not keeping my word. Especially to her and the kids." "I told them 15 minutes, Nathaniel said. "That was an impressive 15 minutes, Alex teased, prompting laughter from the other men. "I'm glad we got it all on video so they can't make up any nonsense," Alex added, shaking his head. They'll fight back, no doubt. But I'm glad Tom's getting better. With him and Greg Downton, they're going to eat them alive, Nathaniel said, leaning forward in his seat as he spotted Arya standing on the main building's porch with Jake and Justin. They'd be smart to settle out of court. They won't avoid jail time. Not with what they did to old man Ian, Alex remarked. Indeed, Nathaniel murmured absent-mindedly, his gaze fixed on Arya. She was carrying one of the babies and was now coming down from the porch with Jake and Justin. He wondered if she liked the changes or if she was going to give him hell for them. Andrew, you can see Arya clearly, right? Nathaniel asked, making Alex lean forward to peer out through the windshield. Yes, boss, I can, Andrew replied, a note of amusement in his voice. Why? What are we looking for? Alex interjected. Is she giving? I'm going to kill Nathaniel. What the hell was he thinking? Or, I love my husband. He's the best, Nathaniel asked, mimicking a feminine voice. Andrew and Alex burst out laughing. What did you do? Alex asked with amused interest. I just touched up the place a little is all. He lied. Andrew laughed. Alex hadn't been to the Everleys' house before, so he had no clue what Nathaniel was referring to, but Andrew did. She looks happy, boss, Andrew replied in a mellow tone, a smile stretching across his face. How can you tell? Nathaniel asked, his eyes narrowing with a tinge of doubt as he tried to get a better look at Arya. Because Anita over there is still smiling and looks happy to see me returning, Andrew pointed out, nodding toward Anita, who was walking over to join Arya. She too was holding one of the babies and was accompanied by Mrs. Everly, Miss Morris, Dr. Sterling, Dr. Hart, Dr. Yen, and Miss Isla Devereaux. Nathaniel chuckled along with Alex. He patted Andrew on the shoulder and said to Alex, "See why Andrew is my head of security?" Andrew laughed in response. Across the grounds, Arya's eyes remained fixed on the approaching jeep, eagerly waiting for it to park so Nathaniel could step out. Just then, her phone rang. Jake reached into her shoulder strap to help her retrieve it, and, after glancing at the caller ID, said, "It's your head of administration, Mabel White." Arya groaned, prompting a laugh from Justin. "We literally just got here," she complained. "Maybe she's just calling to say hi," Justin teased. "How much do you want to bet on that?" Arya retorted, answering the call. "Hello, Ms. White," she greeted in an exaggeratedly cheerful tone, making Jake and Justin chuckle again. "Welcome home, Ariana. Are you on your way here?" came the solemn voice of the older woman. Arya's brow furrowed. "Why? What's happened?" she asked, her earlier humor vanishing. "Ethan Blackwood just arrived with Ian Blackwood. He's in bad shape. Everyone's in shock. Dr. Fields is examining him now," Mabel explained. A storm of emotions surged through Arya. Nathaniel had warned her that the Blackwoods might try to harm Ian, just as they had attempted with Ethan. Still, she hadn't believed they would actually succeed, not against someone as formidable as Ian Blackwood. Dr. Cassandra Fields was a diagnostic doctor recommended by Rowan, along with Dr. Juliet Bennett, a surgeon hired to replace Arya on her unit. Arya trusted that Ian was in capable hands, but in case they needed backup, she figured she might have to step in. Then there was Ethan. He might not be on good terms with Ian, but the man was still his father. He would need her there, along with Nathaniel, Alex, and Anna, for support at the very least. "What's going on?" Anita asked as she joined them. Arya held up a hand, signaling for a moment, then responded to Mabel, "Yes, we're on our way." She ended the call and turned to meet Anita's gaze, filling her in on the situation. By the time she was finished, Anita looked furious. "They won't get away with this, right?" Anita asked, her voice brimming with anger. "No, I seriously doubt the county sheriff would let them. He's real chummy with Blackwood," Justin said before Arya could respond. "I'm coming with you," he added. "Thank you, Justin," Arya said with a grateful nod. She turned back toward the jeep and saw that it had already parked. Nathaniel was approaching, flanked by Andrew and Alex. Seeing him up close made Arya's heart flutter, the whirlwind of emotions he had stirred in her moments ago rushing back. She couldn't ignore the way his eyes were fixed entirely on her. Those intense grey eyes, captivating and unwavering. As if drawn by an invisible force, Arya left the others behind to meet him halfway. "Hello, baby," Nathaniel murmured, leaning in as he cupped the back of Landon's head. His fingers gently stroked the soft fabric of the baby's thick knitted hood, while he pressed a tender kiss to Arya's lips. their eyes locking in an exchange of unspoken intensity. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice laced with gratitude. Nathaniel's chest swelled with emotion. "The pleasure is all mine, honey," he replied in a low, husky tone. "How did it go? Where's Ethan?" Anna asked Alex, breaking the moment. Alex sighed. "Nathaniel cleared everyone out of the house in less than 15 minutes, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "What? Why didn't anyone tell me that's what you planned to do?" Anita demanded, stomping her foot in frustration. Aria laughed, especially as Anita turned her sharp gaze to Nathaniel and Andrew, her eyes narrowing with comical annoyance. "We didn't want to involve you ladies, knowing things might get heated," Nathaniel explained. "But I like heat," Anita retorted with a pout, drawing laughter from everyone. "Don't worry, you'll get your chance," Nathaniel assured her, pulling Aria closer and wrapping her and Landon securely in his arms. "Ian Blackwood didn't look good," Alex said, his tone laced with ardent seriousness. "I just got off the phone with Ms. White. Dr. Cassandra Fields is examining him, but we should head over just in case," Aria added. "Can we come along?" Dr. Williams asked, catching everyone's attention. "It'd be nice to meet the competition," Rowan joked, eliciting chuckles all around. "Let me have the baby," Noria said in a quiet tone, stepping forward and holding out her arms to Aria. Dr. Hart also moved closer, waddling slightly as she assisted in unstrapping Landon from Aria. Aidan and Jake stood nearby, silent and watchful. The only sound across the grounds was the distant laughter of children playing in the treehouse. Aria held her breath as Noria and Dr. Hart carefully worked to free Landon without waking him. Once they succeeded, she smiled as Dr. Hart, despite her protruding belly, deftly secured the baby's wrap before handing him over to Noria. Miss Everly waved Aria off and gestured for Noria and Dr. Hart to follow her back to the house. Jake offered to carry Esme, who was swaddled in Anita's arms, and she carefully handed the baby over to him. Nathaniel watched the scene with a soft smile, noting how everyone was being exceptionally careful not to wake the babies. Aria reached for his hand, and as he moved, he glanced over his shoulder. Alex, Anna, Isla, Dr. Sterling, Charles, Andrew, Anita, Rowan, Williams, and Adam followed close behind. He chuckled quietly, his eyes lingering on the group carrying the babies into the house. A few minutes later, Andrew parked in front of the hospital, and Adam, driving the second jeep, pulled in behind him. Two of the guards who had accompanied Will and Ethan to bring Ian to the hospital quickly opened the doors for Dr. Hawthorne and Nathaniel. Nathaniel was the first to step out of the jeep and immediately reached for Aria to help her down. Alex mirrored his actions, assisting Anna and Anita out of the vehicle. As they all entered the hospital, cheers and joyous greetings echoed through the building as staff members came out to welcome Aria, Nathaniel, and Anita. When Miss White appeared, her face lit up with a warm smile, and she opened her arms for a group hug with Aria and Anita. Afterward, Aria introduced the woman to Nathaniel, while Anita took Rowan, Dr. Sterling, and Dr. Williams on a tour of the hospital. Ms. White led Nathaniel, Aria, Alex, Anna, Isla, and Andrew towards the ward where Ian had been admitted. As they reached the hallway leading to his room, they spotted Ethan sitting on a bench, cradling his head in his hands with Will beside him. Alex exchanged a look with Nathaniel, who called out, "Ethan?" Ethan looked up, his gaze troubled, but when he saw Aria, Nathaniel, and the others approaching, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Are you okay, man?" Nathaniel asked as they approached. Alex glanced at Ethan with a questioning look. Ethan simply nodded, his eyes catching Isla walking alongside Anna. A wave of emotion stirred within him. Despite her own inconvenience, he felt a flicker of gratitude that she had come too. "Has there been any diagnosis yet, Miss White?" Aria inquired, her mellowed voice tinged with concern. "Not yet. We're still running some tests," the older woman replied. "Yes, Dr. Fields is attending to him," Ethan added as the group reached him. Aria gently patted Ethan on the chest before stepping forward and knocking on the door. She entered the examination room with Miss White, leaving the others outside with Nathaniel. Inside, Dr. Fields was fully absorbed in her work, her attention fixed on Ian as she checked his breathing. She didn't immediately notice Aria's arrival. It was only when Aria moved around to the other side of the bed that Dr. Fields glanced up, and froze. Her gaze locked on Arya, her mouth slightly ajar as though caught off guard. Arya, however, was too focused on Ian to register the other doctor's reaction. Her heart clenched at the sight of him. So frail, so emaciated. It was a stark and sobering image. "Good evening, Dr. Fields," Arya greeted absent-mindedly. Her voice was low and filled with concern as she examined Ian. "What have you found so far?" she added, still focusing on Ian. When no response came, she glanced up, her brows furrowing slightly. Dr. Fields was still staring at her, seemingly frozen in place. "You're here," Dr. Fields finally said, her voice hesitant, her British accent mild but obvious. "Yes, I am," Arya replied, a trace of quiet amusement coloring her tone. Dr. Fields straightened, her features relaxing into a hesitant but genuine smile. "Welcome back, Dr. Hawthorne," she said, her voice faltering slightly with emotion. "Thank you," Arya responded with a polite nod before gesturing toward Ian. "Now, what have you found out?" Dr. Fields quickly composed herself, her expression shifting to one of professional seriousness. "He has advanced pancreatic cancer," she began, her voice low and somber, "but that's not the immediate concern." Arya's heart sank at the news, her concern deepening. "What do you mean?" Dr. Fields exhaled, stepping back from the bedside and folding her arms. "His organs are shutting down one by one. His kidneys are barely functioning, his liver is failing, and his heart is under immense strain. But we haven't been able to determine the cause." Arya's gaze returned to Ian as she started to study him carefully. "You're saying there's something else at play?" she murmured almost to herself, the thought settling in her mind with grim certainty. "Of course there's something else at play." Dr. Fields nodded gravely. "Yes, the cancer isn't advancing quickly enough to account for his condition. We've conducted extensive toxicology tests, but nothing has come up so far. Whatever is attacking his system is doing so insidiously, and we're at a loss to explain it." Arya's thoughts had already shifted from Dr. Fields, her focus narrowing on Ian as she scanned for subtle clues. "How long does he have?" she asked absent-mindedly. "If we can't stabilize his organs, perhaps a few days," Dr. Fields said softly, her tone heavy with regret. "We're doing everything we can, but without identifying the source, it's like fighting a shadow." Arya nodded absently, her jaw clenching as her thoughts turned darker. She doubted Dr. Fields understood who Ian Blackwood was or knew his family as intimately as she did. "They're capable of anything," she thought grimly, the pieces falling into place. Ian's wife and family were no strangers to cunning, and the possibility of deliberate harm was far from implausible. "Dr. Fields," Arya said finally, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Yes, Dr. Hawthorne." Dr. Fields straightened, her full attention now on Arya. "I want you to administer Prussian blue and prepare a chelation therapy regimen for the patient," Arya instructed, her voice sounding firm and decisive. "Also begin support for radioactive poisoning. Cover all bases. Let's monitor his response within the next hour." Dr. Fields blinked, her brows furrowing slightly as realization dawned. Arya wasn't spelling it out, but the implication was clear. "You suspect foul play," Miss White murmured, her tone low and laced with concern. Arya nodded slightly, her gaze shifting between Dr. Fields and Ms. White. "I just want to rule out every possibility. Let's proceed discreetly." Understanding the gravity of the situation, Dr. Fields didn't press further. Ms. White then galvanized into action, assisting Dr. Fields to prepare the necessary treatments. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, Adam received a call from Jake, who wanted to know if Adam was anywhere near Andrew, the lawyer. Greg Downton, whom Nathaniel had left in charge of the Blackwoods estate, had been trying to contact him, but his calls weren't going through. "All right, I'll go find him," Adam said, getting out of the car. Still on the phone with Jake, he climbed the hospital's porch stairs and hurried down the hallway as Jake filled him in on what the lawyer needed. "Okay, I'll let him know," Adam was saying when he heard a sharp shout. "Hey, sir, you can't take calls in here." Adam stopped mid-stride and turned to face the source of the voice. Though the Scottish brogue in the feminine tone was faint, it was still noticeable, softening the high-pitched note of irritation. He turned fully and locked eyes with a striking redhead. Her scattered freckles across the bridge of her nose and cheeks added to her fiery expression, making her blazing brown eyes seem almost endearing despite her glower. He considered smiling but thought better of it. "Sorry." Adam started to apologize, his hand still holding the phone to his ear. "End the call, sir. Please respect the rules. No phone use in this section of the hospital," she retorted, her tone firm and broke no nonsense. "Yes, ma'am," Adam replied. She blinked as though surprised he wasn't going to argue with her, then turned and walked away. "Dr. Bennett," a nurse called out, addressing the redhead ahead in the hallway. "Dr. Bennett." Adam repeated the name in his head, letting his eyes trail after her. She was wearing scrubs typical of a surgeon. Though loose-fitting, they hinted at a curvaceous figure, and Adam couldn't help but think his day had just gotten a bit brighter. Back in Ian's hospital room, the treatment regimen Aria had suggested had been administered. As the minutes ticked by, subtle changes began to show on the monitors. Ian's heart rate, previously erratic, began to stabilize. His blood pressure edged closer to normal levels, and the beeping of the machines became steadier and more rhythmic. Dr. Fields glanced at Aria, her eyes wide with cautious hope. "The organ failure seems to have halted," she said in a hushed tone. Aria leaned in closer, examining the data. "Keep monitoring him," she instructed. "If this trend continues, we'll have confirmation." Dr. Fields lowered her gaze thoughtfully before looking back up at Aria. "It's thallium or polonium. 210 poisoning, isn't it?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Aria exhaled softly, her expression grim. "Yes, it's one of the two. His symptoms and the response to the treatment confirm it." Dr. Fields nodded, a gleam of respect in her eyes for Aria. "We need to report this and run further tests to pinpoint the exact toxin." "We will," Aria replied firmly. "But for now, let's focus on stabilizing him fully. And discreetly. No word leaves this room until we have concrete evidence." Ms. White sighed and nodded. Dr. Fields turned her attention back to Ian, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. Aria excused herself then and stepped out of the room. Outside, Ethan, who had been sitting with Nathaniel, Alex, Anna, and Isla, stood up as she approached. The others quickly followed suit. "Well?" Ethan asked, his tone laced with interest. Aria sighed, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "It's poisoning," she said quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened. While he wasn't surprised by the information, he was still concerned that Ian's cancer might prevent him from surviving long enough to undergo treatment. "Will he make it?" he asked, a note of urgency in his voice. Aria held Ethan's gaze as Nathaniel stepped behind her, while Alex and Anna stood flanking both Ethan and Aria. Isla stood quietly on Ethan's right, her hand subtly reaching for his. Without hesitation, Ethan intertwined his fingers with hers, gripping her hand firmly. Inside, he felt a storm of emotions, unable to comprehend why he was so wound up over a man who had done everything possible to make his life and his mother's life miserable. Perhaps it was Andrew's words lingering in his mind, the tone suggesting he might regret not finding closure. That thought stirred unease within him, but surely it wasn't because he cared. Oh, hell no, he didn't care. Yet even if Ian meant nothing to him, Ethan couldn't bring himself to wish the man ill. Ariana studied Ethan's eyes, fully aware of the conflict brewing inside him. Ethan had always cultivated a skeptical, emotionless demeanor. His entire persona revolved around masking his feelings, burying them beneath an aloof facade that conveyed detachment to the world. But Aria saw through it. She had witnessed his most vulnerable moments, when his mother was sick and he had no choice but to come to her father for help. She had seen how much maintaining that facade cost him. That proud, stubborn boy who hated showing vulnerability had been forced to ask for help to save his mother. Knowing that, she understood the strength it must take for him to stand here now, serving as Ian Blackwood's sole source of support. Reaching for his free hand, Aria gently clasped it and said, "I know this is going to be a lot to process, so let me explain. Ian is facing two serious challenges right now. First, he has pancreatic cancer. It doesn't seem aggressive at the moment, but we don't know if he's been treating it. And second, he was poisoned. Based on the symptoms, I suspect it's either thallium or polonium-210. Both are highly toxic substances that can severely damage the nervous system, liver, kidneys, and other organs. The cancer was already putting significant stress on his body, and the poisoning is only complicating things further. We're still working to identify which substance was used, but we've stabilized him, and he's responding positively to treatment, Arya continued in a calm, empathetic tone. How do I feel like you're about to ask me something I'm going to hate, Arya? Ethan asked in a gruff voice. Arya sighed, squeezing his hand in silent reassurance. I'm going to remove the pancreas and replace any other organs that may have been compromised. We can start the surgery tomorrow, but afterward, he's going to need a support system. We can't leave him to face this alone, she explained. Ethan chuckled bitterly, lowering his eyes. Arya and Ela kept their hold on his hands. He doesn't deserve this, Arya, you know that, Ethan said, his voice raw with emotion. Do you realize what you're asking me to do? You're asking me to be his son, to care for him, and to betray my mother, he said through gritted teeth. The alternative is to let him die, and I know you don't want that, Arya replied. She reached up, cupping his jaw and gently lifting his face so he would meet her eyes. Whatever you decide, I'll do it. If you say yes, we will go ahead. If you say no, we walk away. Your call, brother, she said, her voice firm and resolute. Her words were Ethan's undoing. Of course, he couldn't ask her to let someone die, least of all his father. He wouldn't put that burden on her. Yet he understood and appreciated her meaning. She was telling him that she would be there for him no matter what, and his heart swelled with emotion. He let go of Isla's hand and wrapped his arms around Arya, holding her tightly. A tense silence settled over the group. No one spoke, but Alex placed a comforting hand on Ethan's back, and Nathaniel followed suit. You won, Ethan, Nathaniel said when Ethan finally raised his face. Meeting Ethan's gaze, Nathaniel added, You got out of that situation and made a better man of yourself, much better than you would have been even if you had him in your life. You won. Now gloat, he said with a grin. Ethan chuckled despite himself shaking his head. Gosh, Nate, you're a psychopath, he quipped. Nathaniel shrugged dismissively and gave Ethan a firm pat on the back. Ethan took a deep, calming breath and locked eyes with Arya. Nate's right, we won, Arya. Let's save him, Ethan declared. Arya's face lit up with a smile. Andrew let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, relieved that Ethan wasn't being vindictive. Andrew knew the younger man might not realize it yet, but he would feel far better when he could walk away from Ian Blackwood with the knowledge that the man was alive because of his mercy. That satisfaction would be undeniably cathartic. Lewis, who was right behind him, nudged him, prompting him to turn around. As he did, Lewis gestured down the hallway toward Adam, who was trying to get Andrew's attention. Andrew quietly excused himself and strode down the hallway to meet Adam. Jake called. The lawyer, Greg Downton, has been trying to reach you, Adam said. Darn it, Andrew muttered, pulling out his phone. I had to put it in airplane mode when I saw the hospital sign about mobile phones in this area, he explained. Adam grinned, rubbing the back of his head. I wasn't paying that much attention and almost got an earful from a redhead. Dr. Bennett, he added with a grin. Andrew chuckled. Jake mentioned the lawyer wants to know if you plan to keep any of the household staff, like the groundskeeper or the housekeeper, Adam continued. Something about their value, he said. No, we're not keeping any of the old staff. That would be a security risk and I'm not willing to take chances. I'll step outside to make the call. Cover for me, will you? Andrew said. Got it, Adam replied, heading toward the group gathered further down the hallway. Is everything okay? Lewis asked softly as he stepped closer to Adam. Yeah, it's just that no one's been able to reach Andrew, Adam murmured. He stopped speaking when the door to the hospital room on the right swung open. A brunette with dark brown eyes stepped out and called for Dr. Hawthorne. Her gaze landed on Nathaniel Hawthorne, and she froze briefly, her mouth slightly agape. Quickly recovering, she closed her mouth and gave him an awkward nod of acknowledgement. Sir, welcome to Sylvan Ridge, she said, her eyes shifting from Nathaniel to Anna, then to Alex, Isla, and Ethan. Her expression revealed a mix of surprise and confusion as she took in the distinguished group gathered in the hallway. Thank you, Nathaniel replied, and the others followed his lead. This is Dr. Fields, Arya introduced. She's the doctor I mentioned earlier, the one overseeing Ian Blackwood's case. Have you figured out what Ian was poisoned with? Alex asked, his tone laced with curiosity. Yes, sir, The results just came in. It's thallium. Dr. Hawthorne had already suspected it, Dr. Fields said, a proud smile lighting up her face. Of course she did, Nathaniel muttered, placing a kiss on Arya's head. Arya tilted her head back to smile at him. Excuse me for a moment, my love, she said before stepping forward to join Dr. Fields. Adam noticed that just before Dr. Fields followed Dr. Hawthorne back into the room, her gaze flickered toward him and Lewis. Her eyes lingered on Lewis, scanning his tall frame. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, quickly averted her gaze, and disappeared into the room. Adam's lips curved in amusement as he glanced at Lewis, who appeared completely unaware. He stood with his arms crossed, leaning casually against the wall, his attention fixed on the hospital staff moving at the far end of the hallway. Stepping closer, Adam nudged him lightly and whispered, "Did you see that doctor checking you out?" Lewis scoffed. "Not interested," he replied bluntly. "You're no fun," Adam muttered, grinning as Lewis let out a quiet chuckle. When Andrew returned, Adam left without hesitation, scanning the area as he made his way back outside the hospital. His eyes wandered unconsciously, searching for the redhead. At the end of a hallway, he noticed Miss Anita standing with Dr. Rowan and Dr. Williams, engaged in conversation with a matronly woman. Remembering that Miss Anita was also from Sylvan Ridge, Adam assumed she was catching up while giving Rowan and Williams a chance to get acquainted with the facility. He figured Rowan would find it especially interesting since the hospital functioned as an extension of Evergreen Memorial Hospital now. Upon stepping outside to the porch, Adam noticed Dr. Bennett hurrying in his direction. Across the road in front of the hospital, a Chevrolet Silverado Jeep was parked. Two men were inside, one in the driver's seat and the other in the passenger seat. The passenger quickly jumped out and ran after Dr. Bennett, calling out to her while the driver stayed behind, watching the redhead with a leering gaze and an amused smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Adam wasn't entirely sure what was going on, but he suspected the driver had sent the other man after Dr. Bennett. It was obvious, however, that whatever the situation, Dr. Bennett wanted no part of it. Adam found the small-town drama mildly amusing, but his amusement faded when Dr. Bennett's gaze landed on him. There was a gleam in her eyes that spelled trouble, and Adam instinctively began to back up. He had no desire to get involved in what looked like a lover's spat, no matter how much he found himself drawn to the redhead. With the chaos they were already dealing with, the last thing he needed was additional trouble. "I'm so sorry, mister, but could you please act like you're my boyfriend?" Dr. Bennett pleaded. Adam's brows furrowed as he caught the fear in her eyes. Before he could respond, she stepped closer and placed a hand flat against his stomach. Adam inhaled sharply, startled by the wave of emotions the simple gesture stirred in him. His frown deepened. "Dr. Bennett," a male voice called, now much closer. Adam felt her tremble slightly. Her eyes locked onto his, desperation gleamed in them. As he turned his head to look in the man's direction, anger simmered inside him, wondering what the guy had done to make her so fearful. But before he could fully turn, Dr. Bennett cupped his jaw, halting his movement. Rising onto her toes, she pressed her lips to his. "What the—" Adam cursed inwardly, caught completely off guard. The timid, tentative kiss forced him to focus, and he immediately realized how inexperienced Dr. Bennett was. He allowed himself a moment of amusement, trying to downplay the unsettling spark of emotion the kiss was igniting in him. Meanwhile, distracted by Dr. Bennett, Adam didn't notice the murderous glare the man in the driver's seat threw his way. But Ash, who was leaning casually against one of the jeeps they had arrived in, didn't miss it. Ash straightened and strode toward the porch, deliberately blocking the path of the smaller man who was chasing after the red-haired doctor. Looking down at him, Ash said coldly, "Beat it." The man stumbled backward, nearly tripping over himself. He glared at Ash, then turned his gaze toward Adam and Dr. Bennett before reluctantly walking away. Meanwhile, the driver, who had also stepped out of the jeep, was now staring menacingly in Adam's direction. When his eyes settled on Ash, Ash locked gazes with him, returning the cold, piercing gaze as he casually slipped his hands into the pockets of his cargo pants. After a tense moment, the men climbed back into the car and drove off. Ash watched them leave, his instincts telling him that the driver was trouble. He sighed inwardly. He couldn't stand small-town thugs. They were usually cocky, reckless, and always more trouble than they were worth. Ash cleared his throat loudly and said, "They're gone," his deep voice echoing in the cold, crisp air. Dr. Bennett sprang back from Adam and muttered something inaudible. Adam darted his attention from Ash to where the Chevrolet Silverado had been parked just moments earlier. Seizing the distraction, Dr. Bennett bolted. "I hope that kiss is worth the trouble it's gonna bring, man," Ash teased, his tone playful. "She kissed me," Adam retorted defensively. He turned to say, "Ask her," but when he glanced at the spot where the doctor had stood, she was already gone. Adam felt utterly foolish as he looked down the hallway and saw her hurrying away. "Oh, hell no," he muttered in exasperation and took off after her. "Boss is on his way out," Ash called after him, laughing. "I'll freaking walk," Adam growled over his shoulder. He couldn't believe it. She had kissed him just to get her admirers to back off, when he could have easily scared the life out of those idiots for her. Then, after getting exactly what she wanted, she'd walked away without a word of gratitude or explanation. Who the hell did she think she was? Sure, she was hot and probably thought her looks gave her some unearned advantage, but he couldn't stand aggressive, pushy, obstinate women, hot doctor or not. Adam caught up with her at the end of the hallway, grabbing her forearm and jerking her back towards him. "Hey!" she protested sharply. "What the hell was that?" he demanded, his low, deep voice sounding almost like a snarl. "What was what?" she asked, looking at him as though he were crazy. "I have to endure your mediocre kiss, get treated like a piece of meat, and I don't even get a thank you." He shot back, leaning in close. His voice dropped lower, his face just inches from hers. Adam watched as her wide, alarmed eyes gradually narrowed, simmering with anger. "Mediocre kiss?" she scoffed. "It was supposed to be a distraction. What were you expecting? An Oscar-winning performance?" she snapped, her eyes blazing. Damn it all to hell, Adam thought. He hated how her fiery defiance was doing nothing but turning him on. She was absolutely beautiful, and it was maddening. As if you even know what a real kiss looks like, much less how to give an Oscar-winning performance, Little Miss Red Riding Hood, he shot back. "What would you know about a real kiss, you overgrown man-child?" she shot back, her voice faltering with barely contained anger. "What did you just say to me?" Adam growled. "You heard me," she started, but Adam cut her off. He wrapped one arm around her waist, lifting her effortlessly, and pressed her against the nearest wall. His other hand gripped her throat, not harshly but enough to hold her in place, as he crushed his mouth against hers. She squirmed in his arms for a moment, cursing him out, her hands pushing against him, but then she stilled. Adam wasn't sure why he was so angry at her or why he felt such an overwhelming need to make her eat her words, yet as their argument dissolved with every passing second, he realized he had lost himself completely in the kiss. The taste of her, the intoxicating sweetness of her scent mingling with the cold air, the softness of her lips, all of it consumed him. He wanted more. He delved his tongue into her mouth, exploring, stroking, probing. Their breaths grew heavy, loud in their ears as the kiss deepened, neither remembering why it had started, nor even if it should have. Adam paused, unsure why, until he thought he heard someone call his name. He pulled back slightly, his chest rising and falling as he gazed into her eyes. The expression on her face was both captivating and deeply gratifying. She looked dazed, almost lost, her eyes flicking between his and his mouth. Her lips were slightly parted as she drew in shaky breaths. "That, Dr. Bennett, is a kiss," Adam said, his voice low and deep. He then set her gently back on her feet with their eyes still locked onto each other's. Turning away, he spotted Andrew and Ash at the end of the hallway. So he hadn't imagined it. Someone had called his name. Andrew's expression was anything but amused. As Adam approached, Andrew folded his arms and said, "We just got here, Adam, and you're already causing trouble." "She started it," Adam replied, immediately cringing at how childish he sounded. That damn woman. She had him sounding like a sulking teenager. When he looked back, he saw she was still standing there with her fingers pressed to her lips. Adam looked away and grinned. "See you around, Dr. Bennett," he thought to himself in triumph. After ensuring Ian was stable and obtaining Ethan's permission to proceed with surgery, Aria instructed Dr. Fields and Miss White to conduct extensive tests on Ian Blackwood. Before long, Dr. Rowan, Dr. Williams, and Anita joined them. Aria filled them in on Ian's condition, and they nodded along as Rowan reviewed his medical report. "I suppose we're only getting this evening off. This wasn't supposed to be a working holiday," Rowan quipped, earning chuckles from Dr. Williams, Anita, Aria, and Dr. Fields. "Then we'd better get on with the holiday part," Aria said with a smile as she headed to the door. Soon the group headed out with Dr. Fields accompanying them. On their way out, they encountered Dr. Bennett in the hallway, wheeling a patient out of a room. Aria stopped to introduce her to the group. "Meet Dr. Juliet Bennett, one of our surgeons," Aria said, then smirked as Dr. Bennett waved shyly at Rowan. "And of course, she's another one of Rowan's protégés." A light chuckle rippled through the group as Rowan grinned in response. "It's nice to meet you in person, boss," Dr. Bennett said warmly. "Likewise," Aria replied. Before long, the group piled into their jeeps, leaving the hospital staff watching from the entrance as they drove off. In one of the jeeps, Aria nestled against Nathaniel's side in the back seat. He automatically wrapped his arms around her and pressed a kiss on her hair as she rested her hand on his chest. "Do you think it's safe to leave Ian at the hospital?" Anna asked from the second-row seat behind Nathaniel and Aria. Andrew, seated in the driver's seat, responded, "We have guards watching him, Miss Morris." Anna nodded in acknowledgement. "Thanks, Andrew," she said. "You are welcome, Miss Morris," Andrew replied with a smile. By the time they got back to the house, it was already pitch dark, even though it was still technically evening. Ethan peered out the window and muttered, "I'm beginning to remember why my mother hated this place so much. The endless nights. It's quite depressing." He heard Ela let out a sigh and glanced at her, smiling as she leaned into him. He pressed a kiss on her hair. "And you? Do you like the endless darkness?" Anna asked with interest. "Yup, made it easier to be invisible," he replied with a grin. "You know what's depressing right now?" "You, Ethan," Nathaniel chimed in, and Ethan slapped him lightly on the back of his head. "Whoa, you are so dead, Blackwood," Nathaniel threatened. Aria, taken aback, straightened up and turned to look back at Ethan, gaping. "Don't hit my husband," she said with indignation. "He started it," Ethan replied with an unrepentant lift of his eyebrows, making Aria lean forward to smack him on the forehead. Nathaniel held back a laugh, leaning back in his seat and making hand gestures behind her back at Ethan, who struggled to suppress his laughter. Anna giggled, Alex chuckled, and then smacked Ethan on the back of the head. "What the?" Ethan exclaimed, gently pulling back from Isla, who was already laughing so he could retaliate. "Boys, boys, please," Andrew said from the front seat, amusement in his voice. Ash, sitting in the front passenger seat, leaned back and watched the exchange. He loved seeing how, despite their ages and status, the men still acted silly around each other. It was hard to imagine these guys as executives of multinational companies at that moment, but to him, the sense of brotherly camaraderie made the entire scene feel special. As soon as the car parked, Nathaniel saw Owen and Liam running towards them, while Tristan lingered back, unsure whether to follow the twins or stay put. Everyone climbed out of the jeeps, and Nathaniel helped Aria out before turning his attention to the kids who were calling for him and their mom. He moved over to them, scooping both boys onto his shoulders. They both burst into laughter as they excitedly tried to share everything they had been doing in the treehouse. Then we wanted to jump, but Uncle Jake said, "Do that, and I'll give your behind a nice polish." And I said, "Nuh-uh, that's illegal," Liam whispered into his dad's ear, making sure his mom couldn't hear. Andrew, standing next to Nathaniel, laughed, shaking his head at the boys' stories. "Liam really tried it, Dad," Owen said between laughter. Nathaniel chuckled, a mix of amusement and amazement at his little boy's fearless attitude. "I told him, 'You're not the boss of me,'" Liam continued. And Uncle Jake said, "Faffo then," Owen added, giggling. His laughter was so infectious that Nathaniel couldn't help but laugh along. Tristan looked up the meaning, and it was a dare, Dad, Owen added. "Did you actually jump?" Nathaniel asked, raising an eyebrow. Liam pulled back, his eyes widening. "He was really scary, not that I was scared. But don't tell him I said that," Liam quickly added. "Of course, son," Nathaniel replied. "But seriously, don't go jumping off the treehouse. It's about 8 feet tall. You could get hurt and end up in trouble with me and the Dragon Lady." "But there was a pile of snow right there, Dad," Liam argued. Don't take stupid risks, Owen interjected. That's what Uncle Jake said. Good, that makes sense. So did you boys have fun? Nathaniel asked. Oh yes, both boys replied enthusiastically. But I'm not friends with Uncle Jake anymore, Liam declared. Nathaniel and Andrew chuckled. Andrew wondered how long that would last. They all knew those two were inseparable. The treehouse is awesome. Thanks, Dad, Owen said. Liam nodded in agreement, smiling, and hugged his dad tightly, pressing his face against Nathaniel's head. Owen joined the hug. You're awesome, Dad, Liam whispered. Nathaniel's heart swelled with emotion. Thank you, sons, he replied in a gruff voice. Meanwhile, a few minutes before Nathaniel and the others arrived, Jake decided to check on Evangeline, leaving someone else in charge. He headed out to the cottage assigned to him and Evangeline. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips as he noticed the cute cottages made of logs scattered across the grounds. These cottages, surrounded by lush greenery, gave the impression of a small community of medieval settlers, but their architectural design was quite modern. Stone-paved walkways led to a house constructed from logs, glass, and bricks. The home was surrounded by colorful flowers, their soft, rich scents blending with the crisp air in an inviting way. Jake noticed that the drapes had been pulled to shield the glass walls, likely for privacy. He knocked on the sturdy wooden door before turning the knob. The door opened, and he strode into a spacious open-floor living room. A staircase in the corner led to a loft upstairs. The fire in the chimney crackled softly in the quiet room, and the scent of food filled the air. Jake saw the food set up on the marble-covered work table in the kitchenette at the far end of the room. The ceiling was adorned with tiny hanging lights that cast an orange glow throughout the expansive space. The wood detailing and polished floorboards gleamed under the soft light. Cream-colored sofas were arranged near the fire with a dark coffee-brown area rug in the center. A low coffee table sat atop the rug. Jake thought it was a lovely place for a vacation and appreciated Nathaniel's thoughtfulness in always making them feel at home and like family. Honey, Jake called out, a small smile forming when she replied loudly, I'm up here, baby. His gaze shifted to the stairs and he made his way up. It felt as though he'd been away at work all day, now returning home to her. He loved that feeling, having her there, sharing a space and building something that felt like home. He cherished it deeply. At the top of the stairs, he found it was an open-floor bedroom with a large king-sized bed in the center. The bed was positioned next to a glass wall, where Evangeline had drawn the drapes aside, revealing a stunning view of snow-covered plains and greenery softly illuminated by garden lights. It's beautiful here, she said, her smile warm as she looked at him. It is, Jake agreed, his voice deep and full of emotion. He took in her appearance. A silky dress with thin spaghetti straps clung to her figure, the bodice dipping low enough to reveal the start of her full chest. He noticed she seemed even fuller now. Her hair was loosely tied up, with strands falling around her face, her skin glowing without makeup, and her pink lips looking soft and inviting. It dawned on him that they were completely alone. As Jake began removing his clothes, Evangeline shifted onto her side, her eyes tracing the length of his tall, strong frame. Her gaze spoke volumes. She was ready, and she had been waiting for hours. Later, with their heavy breathing the only sound in the room as they tried to recover, Jake pressed a soft kiss to the back of Evangeline's neck and whispered, "Let me bring the food up here." Evangeline shifted lazily in his arms. "I need the exercise," she replied in a hushed voice. Jake smiled, placing gentle kisses along her back. When they eventually got up and headed downstairs, Evangeline's phone chimed with a message midway down the stairs. She turned back to retrieve it, declining Jake's offer to help and reminding him she needed to keep moving. Jake followed her regardless, wrapping his arms around her from behind as she picked up the phone. She opened the message and gasped. Jake immediately took the phone from her hands and read the text. "I'm out, BH. I know where you are, and I'm coming for you." Jake felt her trembling. He slipped the phone into his pocket, then turned her to face him, his large hands framing her face. "Look at me," Jake said firmly, his voice mellowed and commanding. Evangeline lifted her gaze to meet his, her body quaking with fear. Emotions overwhelmed her, but terror stood out the most. Fear for Eli and everyone else who might be hurt just for being connected to her. "Do you know how many ex-SEALs are guarding this place?" Jake asked, his tone measured and reassuring. Evangeline shook her head, her eyes searching his, silently pleading for understanding and forgiveness for the trouble she had brought into his life. "There are about 20 you can see," Jake explained, "and 50 more you can't stationed here because of the Blackwoods. Nathaniel doesn't take chances with his family. And you, Evangeline, are part of that family now. I promise you, no matter what, even 100 Luke Greetums wouldn't get anywhere near you. Even if it was just me, I would die protecting you. Do you understand?" Evangeline took a steady breath, exhaled slowly, and nodded. "Good. Remember this. You're mine now, Evangeline, and no one messes with what's mine." He's a fool for even thinking about it, let alone trying. Evangeline blinked, her gaze softening. As she studied Jake, it was as if she were truly seeing him for the first time. His strong, unyielding presence made her feel secure, and for a moment, she almost felt sorry for Luke. Nathaniel, carrying the boys, glanced back and met Arya's gaze. Without needing words, she nodded and quickly moved to join him. "Let's all freshen up and meet in the dining room," Nathaniel announced. "We'll take care of showing everyone to their lounges, boss," Andrew offered. "Appreciate it," Nathaniel replied, continuing forward with Arya by his side, while Alex, Anna, Ethan, and Isla followed closely behind. "Will, Adam, Charles, Aidan, Ash, Stephen, come over here," Andrew called as Justin, Dr. Williams, Dr. Sterling, Dr. Yen, Dr. Rose,